This problem is burning a hole at the top of the world in the ice cover that is one of the principal ways our planet cools itself. If it goes, it won't come back on any time scale relevant to the human species. Another study shows that the Earth is shaking because of what's going on Greenland. Glacial earthquakes. Seismographers all over the planet are hearing them. In 1993, there were 7 of them, between 4.5 and 5 on the Richter scale. By 99, the number had doubled to 14. This past year, there were 32, between 4.6 and 5.1 on the Richter scale. One of the Science magazine articles I referred to points out in detail why the international scientific report decided that it was impossible to include the fate of Greenland and West Antarctica in their projections, because they don't understand how this could be happening so quickly. Another study shows that there are, among the billions of tons of frozen methane in the tundra areas that have locked it up in ice, the melting is proceeding more quickly than anyone had predicted. Methane's much more powerful as a global warming gas than CO2, about 23 times, they say, as powerful. We need to turn the thermostat back down before that melts. Fires. Some of y'all from the West have had a terrible time with fires. New study correlates it precisely with the warming temperatures. And not just the warming temperatures, the earlier spring, the earlier melting of the snowpack, and the less and the decreased precipitation available to, you've got the study there, Congressman. Thank you. And what it shows is that the drier soils lead to drier vegetation, and that means kindling. And the incidence of large fires in the West, in Russia, in Australia. In Australia, they have what some of them are calling a 1,000-year drought now. It's correlated with these warming temperatures. There are many other signs that we do not have time to play around with this. We do not have the luxury of making it a political football and exercising politics as usual. Here's what I think we should do. Number one, I think we should immediately freeze CO2 emissions in the United States of America, and then begin a program of sharp reductions to reach at least 90% reductions by 2050. All of the complex formulas of how we might start reductions years from now and have a little bit in the first year and a little bit more in the second year, I think we need to freeze it right now. And then start the reductions. Secondly, I believe, and I know how difficult this is to contemplate, but I believe that we should start using the tax code to reduce taxes on employment and production, and make up the difference with pollution taxes, principally CO2. Now, I fully understand that this is considered politically impossible, but part of our challenge is to expand the limits of what's possible. Right now, we are discouraging work and encouraging the destruction of the planet's habitability. We are also in a new world, Mr. Chairman. We've talked many times about the competitive challenges that America faces in an outsourcing world. And with information technology empowering these developing countries with large and fast-growing populations and lower wage rates, our biggest disadvantages in the area of our high wage rates. And we don't want to lower our wages, but we shouldn't worsen that disadvantage by stacking on top of the wages the full cost of our health and welfare and social programs. I understand this is a longer-term shift, But we ought to start making that shift. It would make us more competitive. It would also discourage pollution while encouraging work. I understand how difficult it is, I'll say again. But carbon pollution is not presently priced into the marketplace. It does not have a price tag. It's considered an externality. And there are reasons for that. But if you think about the externalities, they include air and water. I internalize air and water, as most of us do, and I think the economic system should too. And I think that one way to do it is by this revenue neutral tax shift. Third, a portion of those revenues must be earmarked for those in lower income groups who will have a more difficult time making this transition unless you and the Congress make sure that we are giving them assistance that they need. Fourth, we need to be part of a strong global treaty. Now, I'm in favor of Kyoto, but I fully understand that Kyoto, as a brand, if you will, has been demonized. I remember, Mr. Chairman, when I first came to this Congress, one of the issues I worked on was nuclear arms control. Some of the members here I worked with closely. In those years, former President Carter had a treaty pending, the SALT II Treaty. And for a variety of reasons, including the invasion of Afghanistan by the former Soviet Union, it was withdrawn. And the name itself became a political liability. President Reagan was elected, and I worked across the aisle with President Reagan on arms control. And after only a couple of years in office, he came to a realization: we need nuclear arms control. He had been against it, but the realities of the situation made it clear that we needed to move forward. And he came up with even deeper reductions and a new name called the START Treaty. And people who had been opposed to SALT II all of a sudden were in favor of the START Treaty. I think that we should work toward de facto compliance with Kyoto. If we can ratify it, fine, but again, I understand the difficulty. But we should work toward de facto compliance, and here's my formal proposal. We ought to move forward the starting date of the next treaty, now scheduled to begin in 2012, to 2010. So that whoever is elected president and is sworn in January of 2009 can use his or her political chits, if you will, all of the goodwill that comes out of that election campaign and the new inauguration, not just on trying to fight a rearguard action in a bitter battle to ratify a treaty that will expire by the time it's ratified, but to work toward de facto compliance and then start an all-out sprint to negotiate and ratify a new, tougher treaty that will begin in 2010. And we have to find a way, a creative way, to build more confidence that China and India and the developing nations will be a party to that treaty sooner rather than later. Land cover and methane and soot may be opportunities to have provisions that are binding upon them sooner rather than later. But some creative way must be found to make them a part of this effort. Next, this Congress should enact a moratorium on the construction of any new coal-fired power plant that is not compatible with carbon capture and sequestration. And that means that we should have an all-out push to develop carbon capture and sequestration.